At dusk the prairie softened, the horizon glowing like an ember barely held by the sky. The air smelled of dust and faint sage, and the river carried its hush across the valley, as though the land itself guarded secrets too heavy for speech. In that hush stood a Hyoka, her bare feet pressed into the damp bank, watching her reflection bend and break in the rippling water. The girl's dark hair fell heavy with evening wind, her shoulders drawn inward as if shielding her heart from some unseen blade. In her silence she thought the words she could never speak aloud, "I am not beautiful enough." And though the land did not answer, she felt the weight of her belief grow sharper, as though even the earth had agreed. From the cottonwoods beyond, a man lingered with his horse, reins slack in his hand. He had stopped without meaning to, drawn by the sight of her stillness. Elias McGraw, rancher of 30 winters, carried his loneliness like an extra saddle, unseen but always present. The scar along his jaw caught the last light, a reminder of hardship, of nights when even cattle bells felt like company. He had not planned to watch her, and yet his eyes stayed, not for vanity or hunger, but for something he could not name. Why, he wondered, did her sorrow speak to him louder than any Sunday hymn? A Hyoka turned from the water, lifting her bundle of gathered herbs, and the moment broke. She did not notice the rider, or if she did, she turned her gaze quickly away, for she had long trained her heart to expect ridicule where eyes lingered. The townsfolk had taught her enough, snickers at the edge of the market, whispers behind palms about the native girl who never smiled. She carried those words like thorns under her skin, each one proof that her face, her frame, her very presence did not belong to their measure of beauty. When laughter rose behind her back, she bent lower, believing invisibility was safer than confrontation. Still, a question whispered at the corner of her mind: why had the man by the river not turned away? Elias returned to his ranch that evening, the cattle lowing restless under the darkening sky, but his thoughts were elsewhere. The girl's bowed head, the quiet strength in the way she gathered what the land offered, he had seen such dignity only once before, long ago, in the woman he had lost to fever. His house now stood too still, his nights too long, and though he had learned to live without fire in his chest, some ember stirred when he thought of her. He did not seek beauty in the way others did, he sought the stillness that steadied him when storms came. Could it be he had glimpsed it again, fragile yet unbroken, in her? Their first encounter unfolded not under the river's shadow but at the market 3 days later. A Hyoka, balancing her basket heavy with roots, stumbled when one handle snapped. Before she could kneel, a hand steadied the weight. Elias stood there, his shadow taller than hers, his eyes soft but unreadable. She lowered her gaze, expecting mockery, but none came. He said only, "It looks heavy." She muttered thanks, voice caught like a bird in her throat. Their hands brushed when he adjusted the basket, and she felt heat rush to her cheeks. What did kindness mean when she had trained herself to expect none? The silence between them lingered longer than words would have. She hurried away, and he let her go, yet something unspoken tethered them in that moment. Whispers began soon after, curling like smoke in the alleys of town. The rancher watching that native girl? Strange choice. Laughter followed, low and cruel. Men slapped Elias's back in jest, women looked at a Hyoka with sharper eyes, and each murmur deepened the wound she already bore. She withdrew, leaving the market earlier, taking side paths where shadows hid her. Elias heard the talk but did not answer, he had long since learned the futility of chasing rumors. Still, he watched her vanish more often, and the quiet ache in his chest grew heavier. Would she slip away from him before he found courage enough to speak? One evening, as storm clouds gathered on the far ridge, Elias passed near her hut. He saw the fence half fallen, wood splintered where cattle had pushed through. Without a word, he returned at dawn with tools, repairing what was broken. She stepped out, startled, and he tipped his hat as though it were nothing. Another morning she found a small parcel, dried meat and bread, left at her door. No note, no signature, only presence without claim. Such acts unsettled her heart, filling it with both gratitude and fear. Why would he care, when the world had told her she was not worth the trouble? What if these gestures, like every kindness before, disappeared as quickly as they came? The question burned until she could no longer hold it. On a night when the moon glowed pale over the valley, a Hyoka stood before Elias near the corral, hands trembling though no wind stirred. Her voice broke as the truth spilled out, "I am not beautiful enough. Not for you, not for anyone. They laugh when they see us near. I am nothing beside the women you could have." Her eyes shone with tears she had hidden too long, and her shoulders shook as though each word carried a mountain. Would he step back now, the way others always had? Elias did not move away. Instead, he closed the space between them slowly, reverently, as if careful not to startle a wounded bird. His arms opened, not in possession but in offering, steady as the earth itself. When he spoke, his words were quiet, roughened by years of disuse, yet certain. You are the only beauty my heart has waited for. The simplicity of it struck her deeper than any poetry could. In his voice there was no hunger, no pity, only truth shaped by patience. The tears that slid down her cheeks carried both disbelief and release. For the first time, she allowed herself to lean into his embrace. Could it be that worth was not in faces compared, but in souls that recognized each other? Their union followed with a ceremony small but proper, vows exchanged beneath a sky vast enough to hold every secret sorrow. Some townsfolk watched in silence, their whispers fading in the weight of the moment. No grandeur marked the day, only the steady warmth of two hands joined, the quiet dignity of promises made without spectacle. When Elias looked at her, it was as though the prairie itself had bent closer to listen. When Ahioka spoke her vow, her voice did not falter. And when the wind swept across the valley, it carried their words into the wide forever, sealing them with the dust of the earth. Time softened their story into a rhythm of simple days, tending cattle, mending fences, sharing meals where silence felt like company rather than void. Yet in the hush of evenings, when stars gathered over the ranch, Ahioka sometimes traced her reflection in the water trough and no longer saw distortion. She saw a face worth belonging, not because it matched others, but because one man's eyes had chosen to see her fully. And perhaps, dear soul listening to this tale, that is the lesson left behind, that beauty waits not in mirrors nor in the mouths of those who judge, but in the gaze that sees us whole. When such a gaze finds us, it does not arrive with thunder, but with quiet acts of grace, until even the most wounded heart dares to believe it deserves love. And so, when you next feel unseen, remember her story, how worth is not discovered by the world, but revealed when one soul calls another home.